Hello college football fans and welcome into the Scuttlebutt preview of Conference Championship Week for the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12, this 15th week of college football. Please like and subscribe and let's get into it. The Southeastern Conference Championship game with the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Alabama Crimson Tide. The Georgia Bulldogs played Georgia Tech in a rivalry game last week and got a 16-9 point win in a very ugly fashion. The quarterback for Georgia, Gunnar Stockton, had been mentioned in the Heisman Trophy conversation as he's been one of the best college quarterbacks in the nation all season. But this game against Tech was nothing short of ugly. Gunnar went 11 of 21 for a total of 70 yards passing with 1 TD and 1 interception. With the Bulldogs struggling passing the football, they leaned on the running game with the duo of Nate Frazier and Josh McCray totaling 190 yards on the ground. The Unicorn Zachariah Branch hauled in 5 receptions for a total of 53 yards, averaging 10.6 yards a catch, and scored the game's only touchdown. The Georgia defense stepped up when they needed them the most and kept the stellar quarterback Haynes King out of the end zone the entire game, holding the Yellow Jackets to 3 field goals all game. The Alabama Crimson Tide beat the Auburn Tigers in their annual rivalry game at the Auburn Haunted House in a lackluster performance. This was a fourth-quarter game, but at the end Auburn turned over the football too many times and the Crimson Tide prevailed in a 27-20 victory. The Tide's quarterback Tyler Simpson went 19 for 35 with a total of 122 yards and 3 touchdowns, while the Auburn's Ashton Daniels went 18-39 for 259 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. While Alabama accumulated 158 yards on the ground, Auburn rushed for 152 yards. As you can see, both teams were very competitive and equal on the field, but it simply came down to turnovers with the Alabama victory. Now it's time for Alabama and Georgia to face each other for the SEC championship. The last time these two steamrollers met was early in the season, where the Tide beat the Dogs 24-21 in a close one. Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson went 24 for 38 for 276 yards passes, averaging 7.3 per attempt with 2 touchdowns. While the Dogs quarterback Gunnar Stockton went 13 of 20 for 130 yards passing, averaging 6.5 per attempt with 1 touchdown. On the ground, Bama gained 117 yards rushing and the Dogs went for 227 yards rushing. The Tide did their damage through the air while the Dogs brought the fight on the ground. I can see this game being played out very similar in the SEC championship game. Furthermore, there's some key injuries on that Bulldog roster. My gut is telling me the Georgia Bulldogs will win, however I have to see it to believe it. I've got the Alabama Crimson Tide winning 24-21 once again over the Georgia Bulldogs. The Big 10 championship game with a meeting of the top 2 teams in the country, the Indiana Hoosiers versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. The undefeated Indiana Hoosiers took on the Purdue Boilermakers in a straight belt to the backside beating of Purdue with a 56-3 win. Indiana's quarterback Fernando Mendoza completed 8 of 15 for a total of 117 yards, averaging 7.8 yards per throw with 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. You may ask how Indiana scored 56 points with 15 passes, while they did it on the ground with 3 yards and a cloud of dust. Indiana totaled 355 yards on the ground, averaging 9.6 yards per carry on a very overmatched Purdue defensive front. Leading the rushing attack for the Hoosiers was senior running back Roman Hemby, gaining 152 yards on 12 attempts and a touchdown. On the other side of this contest is the undefeated Ohio State Buckeyes that took down their hated rival, the Michigan Wolverines, by a score of 27-9. Quarterback Julian Sayin went for 19 of 26 for 233 yards passing, averaging 9 yards per completion and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. Ohio State effectively rushed the football for 186 yards, averaging 4 yards per carry, with running back Bo Jackson leading the way with 117 yards on 22 carries, averaging 5.3 yards per rush. The Michigan offense was able to rush on the Ohio State defensive front for 100 yards, averaging 4.2 per carry. This should be an epic battle at Lucas Oil Stadium with these two stellar undefeated teams for the Big 10 Conference Championship. When studying both rosters, the Ohio State Buckeyes has the most talent and depth in this competition. The only hope for the Indiana Hoosiers to win this competition is to establish the run with the goal of around 250 yards to keep this game close and keep the Ohio State Buckeyes offense on the sidelines to limit scoring opportunities. I'm sorry, Hoosier fans, but the Ohio State Buckeyes have recruited in the top 5 every year since the 2020 recruiting class. Simply, there is way too much talent on the field to pick against Ohio State. The scuttlebutt pick is Ohio State 28, Indiana 17. The Big 12 championship game is featuring the BYU Cougars versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders. These two teams have an identical record of 11 wins and 1 loss. BYU beat UCF soundly to the tune of 41-21. The BYU quarterback Bear Bachmeier passed for 21 out of 25 for 289 yards, averaging 11.6 yards per attempt with 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions. The BYU rushing attack accumulated 118 yards on 40 attempts while averaging only 3 yards per carry. While the BYU receiving corps gained 289 total yards through the air, with standout Parker Kingston catching 6 receptions for 126 yards and 1 touchdown. On the other hand, the Texas Tech Red Raiders beat the brakes off the West Virginia Mountaineers 49-0. Texas Tech quarterback Morton went 25 of 32 for 310 yards passing, averaging 9.7 per attempt, and scored 3 touchdowns through the air, while the Texas Tech rushing attack went for 188 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns led by running back Cameron Dickey. The Texas Tech receivers total 384 yards with an average of 13.2 yards per catch and was led by Caleb Douglas and Terrence Carter Jr. The unsung hero of this Texas Tech team is the Red Raiders defensive front that held the West Virginia running backs to only 37 yards on 22 attempts. In the regular season, these two teams met where Texas Tech beat the BYU Cougars 29-7. During this contest, Texas Tech outpassed and rushed the Cougars significantly. I think the past will repeat itself, and the scuttlebutt pick is the Texas Tech Red Raiders 28 and the BYU Cougars 21. With this high-powered offense, the Red Raider fans may just run out of tortillas. Please like and subscribe and come back to talk about the College Football Playoff Committee selections and what the committee got right and what they got wrong. Until then, see you next time.